So one of the things that I've talked about a lot is bad prospects. And that's one of the ways that we just like to say, that guy was a bad fit. And one of the things that I've really realized is the only bad fit is somebody that we can't help. If we could help them, and they were qualified, and their business had the infrastructure to benefit from our service, they were a good fit. Now, if they asked questions, if they wanted more information, they wanted to shop it around, it just means we didn't create a boundary for them in some way. And so instead of writing off sales calls where someone was asking a lot of questions or they wanted to speak to references, instead I want us to look at that as not a bad prospect, but look at it as someone where we didn't behave in a way that made that irrelevant to them. The other vendors, references, case studies, whatever else it was that they needed. And so a bad prospect can be turned around to be a good prospect with those good boundaries. And so as we talked about, creating those boundaries on the call, let's find out what your challenges are and see if and how it makes sense. If they want to talk to references, we can get to how to handle some of that stuff. So one of the best ways to handle objections in the call at the later stage is after you've made that offer and you said, cool, we're going to work with you on getting that outcome. And the investment for the program is this. We can get started in about a week, or 3 days. Then basically objections start to come up. It's price, so that's a lot of money. All right, it's like, well, the outcome we're trying to achieve is this, and if we achieve this many people, that's above and beyond what you're investing. Okay, great. So it's like, if they're like, well, I can't get started right away. Well, you just told me on this call that this is something you wanted to do right away. So was it something you wanted to do right away, or did I misunderstand you when you said that earlier? So objections can be handled in a way where instead of trying to come up with some little quick twist on the words, you're simply trying to reconcile what they said earlier on the call with what they now said at the end when an offer was made. If they're making $200,000 a year, they want to make $400,000 a year. You presented an offer for them that costs $30,000 a year. Okay, we're talking about adding $200,000 a year to your business for $2,500 a month. How does that not make sense? It's expensive. It's like, well, how is that expensive? So it's like now you start to get into these things where it's an illogical thing in some way that they brought up this point. So handling objections should be as simple as trying to understand the contradiction in the statements they made earlier in the call about the urgency and the desire they have to grow their business related to now, well, here's a vehicle to do that. What are the specific reasons you have for not wanting to move forward or wanting to look around at other options? It's like, well, you looked at these other options and why haven't you moved forward with these options? It's like, well, I'm not sure they can get results. Why aren't you sure they can get results? It's like, well, I've hired other people in the past. So is it more about poor performance on the service provider or poor selection on your part of whether or not someone's actually going to be able to provide you results? And so now you're getting them into understanding why the past decisions did not produce the results they wanted. So that's one of the best ways to handle the objections when you structure the call this way. So the key thing is just make sure you align them with what they said. And if they said they really can't do it for a year, you say, well, we can go back to earlier parts of the call where they said, well, why are we talking now? Why is this something that's important for you to do now? If you can't get started for 3 months, like what's the real reason for that? So that's one of the things I think is really, really important. So if there's 3 things that I have seen that are critical in the sales call, from a structure standpoint, is just make sure that both you and them understand the challenges that they're facing in their growth. Without a challenge, there is no sale. The second thing in that would be end bad sales calls early. If it's someone who's so clearly unqualified and so clearly not a buyer, end the call as early as possible, politely. And save that sales power, because the more time you spend with non-buyers, that creates an energy that makes it very difficult to perform with the people that will buy. And not only that, it's just a waste of time. So like for you, Philip, some of the people you've talked with, I'm sure you've identified early on they're just not a fit. And it's like as soon as it's not a fit, politely getting off the phone as soon as possible is the best thing. Because that's all time you can spend responding to prospects, improving your campaigns, reviewing your recording from your last sales call and taking notes, working on your mindset. There's so many different things to do. So if we can take a bad sales call from an hour in where we get rejected and just spend that hour working on our business, that's a way better use of time. But not just that, the mindset that we save from avoiding that rejection is critical. So that's key. And then the third thing would be really just make sure the level of commitment they have is high. Someone says they want to double their business, they can't tell you why, there's no commitment level. There should be a high desire, there should be a commitment there, they should see some challenges, and then just avoid the people that fall into none of those categories. So one of the things I wrote out here was just like a role-playing scenario of just like what you guys might get with like a rough prospect that's like immediately like combating back at you. So it might be like, hey, well, thanks for coming on the call. Want to ask a couple questions, see if and how I might be able to help you grow. And it's, all right, great. Well, why don't you tell me what you do? It's like, well, I do a lot of different things. I help, like in your case, you'd be like, Mike, I help attorneys grow their businesses. Is that why you reached out? Are you looking to grow your law practice? Right? And I immediately get on that. Or do you want it to stay the same size it is? Because there are people that want it to stay the same size. Like, well, comfortable in the business size right now. I know that growing is going to create more problems. I'd rather keep it at the revenue because I can handle this revenue. It's my comfort zone. Right? So do you want to grow or do you want to keep your business the same size it is? Like, well, I want to grow. Okay, great. So like now you can get into like, well, why do you want to grow? What have you tried to do that hasn't worked? What growth did you achieve from this year to last year? All these types of things. So some of this other stuff isn't as relevant here. One of the things you can certainly focus on is when people have used past vendors, you can ask them, if they specialize in the field. It's a very important one. It's like understanding the levels of why something wouldn't have worked. So like, did they specialize in helping? So like for you, Mike, you can just, if they're like, well, we hired someone, they didn't get us great results. Do they specialize in helping estate attorneys? Because there are a lot of agencies that specialize even in attorneys, and of course even more that don't specialize in that. So now it's, okay. Well, it's like it's very clear. Well, you didn't hire someone that just works with estate attorneys like myself. Like for you, Amanda, it could be, well, did you hire one of the big box chains to do it? That includes like a website as part of their thing. Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of these big providers in these places are website companies that are really looking to just sell their template websites, and they just happen to throw in some online marketing stuff. So you can say, I don't do web design because that's a totally different skill set. We just do patient generation. There are a lot of providers out there that saw the money in generating leads, and they simply offered it to their existing customers.
Do you think at that point too, like, is there value in saying, I'm set up differently, or I'm like more of a boutique agency, like going the whole route of?
I wouldn't say boutique or anything like that. Just be like, yeah, well, we're specialists. We have personal relationships with all our clients. Don't have layers of management.
Okay.
So we run, control, and own the entire process.
Yeah, I just wondered because I think that's where I might be setting a bad before boundary or whatever, is because if I'm saying how I'm personalized and committed to their growth and success, then they might be take advantage of your time and want all this above and beyond.
Yep. Well, another one would be the follow-up to the question, were they a specialist in this type of attorney? It's like they're like, no. Well, then why did you hire them?
Yeah.
They might be like, well, they convinced me they knew what they were doing. So I've just been burned by these marketing companies. Be like, well, then I would just say, then don't hire any marketing companies, and just keep your business where it's at. And I'd be like, well, I have to market my business. You're like, all right, so you're not trusting of marketing people, and you're not trusting of yourself, yet you need marketing to move forward. It's like, well, something has to change here. Either you stay where it's at, or you agree to trust somebody. Why not trust somebody that knows your situation and specializes in it? And from there, it's, yeah, well, what would you like changed? I mean, is that something you want to change?
Do you, when you're doing your pitch, do you go with the word we or go with the word I more? If you're trying to establish yourself as like, if I'm going to be working with you, like would you say, you know, I have a process that puts you in place, or we have a process that we put in place?
I typically use the word we, but I've occasionally used the word I. Personally, I haven't seen any difference. It's almost like they don't even notice.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't even notice. I'll use them interchangeably. So, the key principle again is, understanding that when someone makes an investment, they're clearly understanding that there is more to gain than there is to lose. Whatever they're investing with you is small compared to the outcome they can get. If they don't see that, then that's where the price question comes. Oh, that seems like a lot of money. A lot of money compared to what? Like, a lot of money is a lot of money if you light it on fire, but it's not a lot of money if it comes back with friends, right? It's like, if money comes back with friends, the only question is how many can I send? But if I'm going to throw it in the hole, well, yeah, I want to throw $0 in the hole. It's like, so you're either saying this is a hole and nothing's going to come out the other side, or you don't think much will come out the other side. If that's the case, I mean, how did you get that impression? It's like, how much would you guys pay for a $100,000 lottery ticket that was guaranteed to win? Like I literally showed you, they just called it, it's 100 grand. I'd pay up to $99,000 probably. It's the same thing, right? It's like that, if there's an outcome that they can see that's reasonable enough, likely enough to happen, then they will make that investment. And all the smart people out there know that there's no such thing as a guarantee.
Better question. So the last client I signed, we're trying to run into a situation where I get my price was $1,500 a month, and then I told them there's a $50 daily budget associated with that. And once you do the math, it ends up being around $2,500 that he's investing into this. So if one client to him is worth, $1,250, he needs 2 clients to break even. And he said, do I really want to do that kind of work just to break even at 2 clients? Even if he is making money on the third, what would you say in that regard?
What types of clients were these?
Real estate law.
Real estate law.
So one client to him is worth $1,250, and for
You should probably be able to get him like 5 clients. And if you can't get 5, at least, then it's probably not going to make a lot of sense for him. So, I mean, you're 100%. I mean, I wouldn't want to do something that I just broke even, especially if it took my time to deliver.
Yeah.
So it is a reasonable enough objection.
Okay.
So for you, you should talk with your contractor and find out what's a reasonable outcome for an AdWords campaign like that, for that niche. And if they've been able to deliver estate planning stuff with a similar budget at a similar amount, you should be able to roughly project that for them. Say, this is what we think we can do, and then furthermore, we could probably scale that up. Like if you get him 20 a month in his area, well, now that's a pretty solid source of business for him.
How would you decide how many clients you can get from a number of leads? Would you just
Well, this is where going into the realm of specialization is so important. Like Mike is going to know pretty soon exactly what sort of outcome he can provide for, an attorney in that space. And so for you, that's just the nature of the beast you're in right now. Is if you have a contract that has experience there, you can try to lean on their experience and what they've been able to do, at least the number of inquiries they've been able to get. But otherwise, yeah, you are kind of going to have to ask them to say, well, we don't know. We just know we're going to get activity, and our goal is to see what sort of ROI we get on that activity in our first month together.
Yeah, if I could share, when I was starting out, I would be very broad, and because I didn't really know what type of results I could do. I didn't have any experienced contractors. We were really creating AdWords campaigns from scratch, and then after a while, it was just like, I could get you 5 projects, no problem. So they're like, cool.
I mean, ROI has to make sense underneath. It's like they're not buying, because if there isn't an outcome that produces the revenue, then the thing that they want isn't going to happen. Their son won't go to private school.
Yeah.
All they're going to do is they have to deal with you and then do 2 jobs effectively for free. So for him, yeah, it doesn't make any sense if that's the outcome you can provide. So yeah, really when it comes to the investment, you need to, really just show them that it's such a simple thing. The people that want guarantees, it's typically because they have not gotten results in the past. And it's so critical during the questioning process to find out what they've tried, what else they've tried, who else they've tried things with, and how well they went. And more importantly, if it would fail due to the vendor or to the client. So this is where, like we were talking about, what's their process for taking on calls? Was it a shitty vendor, or was it them not picking up the phone? If you can determine one or the other, that in itself is valuable for them. They'd be like, holy crap, yeah, we didn't really pick up the phone at all. Okay. Well, if someone's calling in for disability insurance and they're a bigwig doctor where their schedule is booked out like 3 days in advance, how could they possibly be bothered to call you a second time if they called you and never heard back? And it's like, okay, so now there's this revelation. Okay, we dropped the ball on our process for taking in the leads. And reminding them that today's consumer is fickle, very, very impatient, and they want things right now. They call, someone better pick up the phone. If it's something like AdWords, you can use day parting where they're only showing your ads during a certain part of the day, and then you're not going to get calls after hours. Most sophisticated places have an answering service, an after-hour answering service, because they realize that somebody picking up the phone, even after business hours, is critical. And so you want to understand what that process is. And if they didn't have that in place, then that plays a significant role. And you just say, well, that would be, that would certainly be a concern for us working together, because I wouldn't want to join the list of your past failures. So if someone says, can you guarantee me like this many clients a month? You can say, are you asking this because you've had struggles with past service providers? And then another question you say, or do you think it's because of your inability to screen service providers in the past? And so you're trying to figure out, like, was this because of a previous screw up? Or do you think this was, something that didn't quite go according to plan on your part?
Along the same lines of the guarantee, kind of where I'm at in my space with no clients, no proven record, what's the best way to overcome that objection at this point right now? Well, who have you worked with before?
Who have you worked with before?
Who are your clients, or what proven results do you have, type of thing?
Well, I mean, you got to understand like the context in which that comes up. I mean, if they're like, well, who are you proven clients? It's like, if that's coming up after 40 minutes, like the answer to that question, even if it's 10 people, including Oprah, it's not going to close.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's number one. But that question's more related to a lack of trust or something seems off in the call.
Okay.
So to be candid, there really isn't a great answer to that question. I mean, it's kind of like, we work with a number of different people, different processes, but we treat each situation uniquely. And then it's just back to, well, we have a process that works. We implement it for you. So a good analogy of this would be, like weight loss and stuff like that. Like if you go into a scenario where like someone comes in, they're like, hey, I'm still overweight and I haven't achieved my goals. It's like, well, there's really only a couple variables as it relates to that. There's exercise and diet, right? Nobody ever came in and said, Doc, I've been exercising in the gym, every day for an hour, and I've only been eating like these fruits and vegetables and everything, and I still can't seem to lose any weight. It's like something was not being done right. So no one ever said, I hired a service provider, they provided me leads, we answered the phone, and we just didn't grow our business. Somewhere along the line, there was a breakdown in that service process. And that's typically why the guarantee question is asked. And so from then, it's your job to go in and diagnose why it didn't work. So that's what we talked about, like, postmortems with like an AdWords campaign audit. Like there's some questions you can ask that can create doubt and help them realize that at some point, like this shit works. It didn't work for you. Was it because of you or was it because of who you chose? And was it because you used a poor criteria in how you chose your past service provider? Was it because it was a friend of a friend or some friend's son? What was the reason why and what sort of vetting or selection went to the service provider? Were they a specialist? Did they have a proven process? These types of things. If you ask these things, like you might think, well, what if they asked me that? Well, they're not going to ask you that if you're asking it that way if the past provider had those types of things. And from there, you can really show them there's a reason it didn't work. It's not like, mystery show on, documentary about, the guy that hired a leads company and didn't get any leads. It's like something didn't work here. It's fairly straightforward. It's not like Bigfoot. So again, if someone's overweight, it's food or activity related. It's not some arbitrary additional thing. And so you don't get to where you are in the business by having a perfect system to nurture leads and a pipeline of people that are qualified who are calling in. Here's some other stuff I kind of wrote down, just some thoughts on pricing and stuff. And so people will come in and one of the things that people will be like, oh, well there's other guys that do that for less. A lot of you guys have gotten that one. I can hire some guy in India for like $500. So from there, I think a really great way that I've been trying recently that seems to work is really something along the lines of, well, look, you deserve to get the price you want to invest in. And if you're able to get results in that investment level, awesome. And if you don't, then feel free to reach back out. Another great thing is, I may charge more, but I think we can do more for you. I've typically seen there's a strong correlation between what you invest and the outcome that you get. And that might be something to consider when you make your decision. And so you're not telling them cheaper is a mistake. You just say, well, go try cheaper. And then if after you've experienced that service level, if you find you want to upgrade, then call me back.
So I've got something that's perfect for that. So some of these attorneys I speak to, they'll use a service like avo.com or there's some nationwide stuff, and some of them get poor results. Some of them are like, yeah, it gets me a new client a month or whatever, and they spend $500 on that month. Great. I'm like, awesome. So are you? You tell me you're trying to double your practice size, okay? With using Avo or this service, are you going to get there? No. Do you think there's kind of a ceiling on that? Yeah, I think I'm already hitting it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're talking.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't poo-poo what that's doing. It's like, hey, if you're trying to grow by 10%, have at it. You can get a return. Those are the people I help. So.
It doesn't really matter if you can put $1 into an investment and get 5,000 back, or heck, even 20,000 back. The only that matters is if I can do that with $10.
Yeah. Yep.
And so if there's no scalable vehicle for escalating the investment and attaining a similar level of return, there is a flaw in that vehicle, at least in its ability to reach the outcome they want. It doesn't mean that that is an inefficient process or that should be discarded. It simply means that more is needed, something else is needed. So it's not saying that it's wrong to price something more. It's just saying, hey, look, if that's your budget, great. Go find someone that will work with that budget. If it works, great. If not, call me back. A lot of times it's like, oh, it's like, well, you go into a steak restaurant and you're like, great, well, our dinners start at $50. Well, I only got $25. Well, great, well, you deserve to get whatever experience you can get for $25. There's a Hooters around the corner. There's also a fish sandwich place there and a Mexican place. It's like, that's just the option. We're not gonna lower our menu price just because you only have $25. You either see the value in investing the $50 or you don't. If you see the value, then let's work together, and it's that same type of thing. And that's a great way I've found, because I've had a few people now, it's funny because I got that more in the digital marketing retainer side. Now I've gotten a few people in the coaching thing where they'll be like, ooh, well, $6 grand's a lot. Or like, I was talking to this other guy and it's like 3. Or he's like, oh, I thought this was gonna be like 3 or 4. It's like, great. Well, go find someone that'll take it for 3 or 4 and hopefully it works out. And it's not to say they can't find somebody, but I'm not gonna cater to that budget. Dude, someone should just actually give that car a reason to beep its horn. So one thing I think will just be, it's a bit analytical, but it can give you guys just like a mindset of how to look at different stages of like a service or product acceptance. And so the 5 stages are the approval stage, the acceptance stage, the acquisition stage, application stage, and the advocacy stage. So we're gonna kind of go through each of these 5 stages. This is really talking about kind of like 5 different levels of a prospect or client. So the approval stage is really about them just responding with a rejection or an approval. So that means they kind of accept your service, they see the benefits of it, and they have a positive perception of the approval. And they realize that it's something that they should take action on. It's basically like them being like, okay, I'll buy it. The acceptance stage is really more about them accepting the need for the service. And so that's like the next level of commitment. It relates to the outcome. They may get hung up in that stage. This is kind of, we're done for you, can kind of take over a little bit when you're doing this stuff for them. The 3rd stage is really the acquisition stage. So this is where things move from like, they've made a theoretical purchase to now there's a reality. This is like the leads coming in, right? So leads are coming into the business and we need to provide them with leadership and everything to make sure that they're doing their part to convert the leads and actually turn them into new customers. 4th stage, like we talked about, the application stage. That's really where they're applying it, they're actually assimilating the different leads as they come in, they're converting these leads into new customers. And this is like, they've fully experienced and participated in your product and service. And the last stage is the advocacy stage. This is the point where they've gone through all of this and they've achieved a positive result. And because of that, now they're an advocate. That means they're going out, they're willing to do referrals, they're willing to speak to other people for you, and they pretty much promote you to anybody they come across who is of a similar avatar to themselves. So we want to sell to that last state. And that's really where we eventually want to sell them to the point that they're a happy client and that they send us referrals. Because referrals are an awesome way to grow your business once you guys get a client base. Because you will have happy customers. If you're not getting referrals, it means you're not making somebody happy somewhere. But that's the cool thing, is like everything we're doing is we're not relying on referrals at all. It's just building the base of people that can and will refer us. Most things don't work that well. When something works, people talk about it because it's a rare thing. Especially in the marketing world. I think there's something like statistically like 93% of marketing efforts fail. it's bad. And by fail, it's just like, it didn't produce any sort of return on investment. Maybe produce some activity, but just not a return. So when something actually does work, people talk. So last thing I've got is just some additional mindset stuff about the sales calls, some other collected thoughts to end our presentation. So I've talked about this a lot. Know that they have a problem. It's not going to solve itself. It's not like they're just going to wake up and people are going to call them. They've got to grind right now. They're in that hell. They're on that hamster wheel. They're getting up at 5 a.m. They're going to bed at 7, just trying to get by in a lot of ways. They haven't really made it in the business. I wouldn't say any of you guys in here are desperate, but always remind yourself that even if you go on a streak, that desperation will always kill a sales call. Even if you get 5 no's in a row, that desperation of, oh, is no one ever going to say yes again? Like that thought, which is very hard not to have, that can kill a call. So it's like you always want to go through, flush all that stuff out with all those affirmations we talked about, go through that heaven and hell worksheet and everything like that. I'd say one of the last things to do is, when you're on your headsets and everything like that, just practice using the mute button and just letting them really just finish their thing. I mean, even if you give them like 2 or 3 seconds, just like a lot of times they'll just throw out more information. I just had a call like this the other day where I was like, if I had gone in and tried to lead the conversation, like more of an authoritarian style than just more caring, relaxed style, then I don't think the sale would have happened. But because I just let him just talk, he'd like start, and I could just tell. I was like, wait for it, and then like 3 seconds later, he'd throw on another thing. There are people that's how they think and that's how they communicate. So just let those guys really finish their thought. Like don't try to come in and just, the best thing to do is mute yourself.